Laura, thanks for being with us once again on BBC News. That development today with Prime Minister Netanyahu dissolving the war cabinet, what do you think was his thinking or his reasoning behind doing that?
Well, look, the war cabinet is dead. Long live the war council. It's mostly symbolic. He's still going to rely on his key advisors. But he was trying to kind of elbow out the two far-right extremist ministers from saying we'd now like to join the cabinet. So the best thing to do was to shut it down and tell them there is no spot for you because the war cabinet no longer exists.
What impact will that have on Benjamin Netanyahu domestically?
Well, look, Israel is facing its biggest military challenge in its history with the least military experience in the government. And Netanyahu has lost not only his domestic political legitimacy, but also internationally, because it was clear that the Biden administration and other world leaders prefer to deal with Gantz and Gabi Ashkenazi because they were seen as moderate voices. That said, where there is vulnerability with Netanyahu, there's opportunity, at least for the United States, because he might be more willing to sort of make concessions, show some flexibility here. I think we saw it with a hostage deal a few weeks ago when he was, under threat from the ICC. I imagine that behind the scenes there was some negotiating with Netanyahu to say, show us some vulnerability, some concessions here, and we'll see how we can protect you there. For Netanyahu, it's a little bit about a get out of jail free card. He's facing corruption charges at home, and he's under threat at the ICC abroad for, committing genocide or war crimes. And right now he's just trying to navigate it all.
It would seem from this remove anyway that the ceasefire talks are at somewhat of an impasse. Does this change in the circumstances make it potentially easier or more difficult for Prime Minister Netanyahu to make a compromise, to make concessions?
Well, right now, I mean, all parties can say, in the words of Mick Jagger, you may not always get what you want, but you have what you need. Netanyahu has what he needs right now. He has the kind of rope, the time to continue to drive into Rafah and clean up what he considers, these terror tunnels and the final remaining brigades of Hamas fighters. Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, also has what he wants. He may not have what he needs, which is victory, but his heart is still beating. Hamas is still a viable force, and that's what he's hoping for. And President Biden has put out a plan. He's shown that he's in charge. He's shown the initiative. He's kind of issued a pre-buttal, I would say, to that speech that Netanyahu is coming to give on July 24th to Congress. So everybody is where they wish they were somewhere else, but if they have to be somewhere, it isn't too bad. It's a holding pattern, but that's where we are today.
And of course, all the while, hostages remain in captivity, and the humanitarian situation in Gaza is beyond horrendous from all the reporting that we've heard. We saw the Israeli military say they were going to put this pause in fighting during the daylight hours, something that Prime Minister Netanyahu said he hadn't signed off on or agreed to. Are we seeing cracks appearing there in the chain of command?
Well, there's a lot of sort of confusion and mixed messages, not only with that, with regard to the fighting, but also with regard to the ceasefire itself, right? The United States is speaking for Netanyahu, saying that he's accepting it, but he can't say it publicly. It's so hard to do all of this publicly, these kind of hostage negotiations and military orders, when you have so many different competing voices and pressures. He's trying to hold on to power. But the administration is very conscious of the human suffering. I just came back from the White House. I was there this afternoon. Vice President Harris was speaking at an event about sexual violence in context of war. And there was a freed female hostage, Amit Susana, who spoke. And President Harris said, every single person suffering, woman, child, civilian, in Gaza and in Israel, breaks our hearts. They're engaged, and that's why she said one more time, Hamas needs to accept this ceasefire. Right now, Hamas is on the hook, again, which is where Netanyahu would rather be.
And just to look at another angle of this, Laura, without a deal, without a noticeable pause in fighting, with that dire situation there, all the while we're seeing recent intensifications in the exchange of fire on the border with Lebanon, with Hezbollah there. Is there now an enhanced risk of this conflict spreading?
Yes, the risk of miscalculation is so high. Look, on October 7th, Hamas called this the Al-Aqsa flood. It was supposed to be a flood of fire from all all the nations that support Hamas, all the, the radical groups that are backed by Iran, including Hezbollah. But instead of a flood, it's kind of been a steady drip, drip, almost like a leaky faucet on the northern border. But this is increasing more and more every day. Israel took out a key leader. Hezbollah responded with 400 rockets, which was like unprecedented since October 7th. So yes, any moment that there could be a miscalculation, Israel says, look, we need to escalate to de-escalate. We need to show them that we can still have our deterrent power following October 7th. That's been their main concern. Can we deter future aggression? Hamas, the war in Gaza was always considered the warm-up war. The real war is to the north.
Okay, well, plenty more to talk about. We'll have to leave it there for the moment. Laura Blumenfeld, thanks for joining us once again on BBC News.
Thank you.